Chapter 1: The Mysterious Message. The hum of the Stardust Drifter, a deep, almost comforting thrum, usually filled Jax with a sense of quiet competence. Today, however, it felt like a drumbeat of unease. The bridge, typically a beacon of sterile efficiency, buzzed with a nervous energy that prickled the hairs on his neck. It had all started with a ghost. Not the spectral kind, but the even more unnerving variety, a message out of the void. "Jax, I think you need to see this." Dr. Ares Thorne's voice, usually a calm melody of scientific detachment, was edged with an uncharacteristic tremor. He stood before the main console, his fingers dancing over the holographic display, which showed a rapidly fluctuating waveform. Jax, the captain of the Stardust Drifter, approached, his boots clicking deliberately on the metal floor. He was a man who exuded an air of controlled power, his weathered face and close-cropped grey hair bearing testament to years spent charting the unknown. He'd seen nebulae bloom, witnessed the birth of stars, and navigated asteroid fields denser than a swarm of bees. Yet, the image on the screen gave him pause. "What is it, Ares?" he asked, his tone even, despite the flicker of apprehension in his gut. "We picked it up an hour ago, Captain," Ares explained, his wide, intelligent eyes fixed on the display. "A burst of something. It's unlike anything I've ever encountered. It doesn't match any known frequency, no radio wave signature, no gamma burst. It's organic, almost." Around the bridge, the crew was abuzz with quiet speculation. Zara, the comms officer, a bright spark of energy with a shock of vibrant blue hair, leaned forward, her brow furrowed in concentration. Kai, the stoic engineer, a mountain of a man with hands calloused from years of tinkering, grunted, his gaze fixed on the readings. And then there was Lyra, the ship's navigator, a quiet observer with eyes that held the wisdom of ancient star charts, who seemed to be absorbing every detail. Jax reached out, touching the surface of the holographic display. The waveform pulsed and vibrated beneath his fingertips, a living thing caught in the digital net. It felt alien, strangely unsettling. "Where did it originate?" he asked. "Unknown, Captain." "It's not pointing to any discernible source," Zara replied, her fingers flying across the console, pulling up star charts and spectral analysis. "It just appeared." The implications were immense, and they hung heavy in the air. A message from nowhere. A communication that defied their understanding of the universe. "Okay, Ares, let's break this down," Jax ordered, his voice gaining a crisp edge of command. "I want a full analysis of this signal. Leave no stone unturned. Zara, try to triangulate a source point, even if it's just a faint trace. Lyra, I want you to review our navigation logs for any anomalies within the last 24 hours. Kai, is the ship functioning normally?" "Aye, Captain," Kai replied, his voice a deep rumble. "The engines are purring like a contented beast. All systems are nominal." With the orders given, the bridge settled into a focused hum of activity. Ares delved into the complex data, running simulations and algorithms, his face bathed in the eerie glow of the console. Zara tapped away at her station, her brow furrowed in concentration, trying to find a pinprick of origin in the vast fabric of space. Lyra retreated into her realm of stardust and constellations, her fingers tracing paths on ancient star maps as if seeking answers in the whispers of the cosmos. The process of deciphering the message was agonizingly slow. The anomaly resisted all conventional decoding methods. The waveform pulsated with an intricate, layered complexity that seemed almost intelligently designed. It was as if the very universe was speaking in a language they were struggling to understand. Hours blurred into an endless cycle of analysis and recalibration. Frustration began to simmer beneath the surface, with Ares's measured calm replaced with agitated fidgeting. "It's like trying to solve a puzzle with pieces that don't fit," Ares muttered, his hands raking through his already disheveled hair. "I've rewritten the code, recalibrated the analyzer, and still, nothing. This isn't a language, it's something else. Something more." Jax watched him, his gaze keen. He knew Ares was right, this was more than a simple signal. It felt alive, as though it contained a secret that demanded to be unveiled. He turned to Zara, who was now staring at the screen with a mixture of bewilderment and concern. Any progress, Zara? Zara shook her head, her blue hair swaying like a strange, vibrant halo. Nothing, Captain. No echoes, no residual signals. It's as if it just dropped out of the sky. This doesn't make any sense. Jack's new doubt was a dangerous companion on a long space voyage. He walked over to Zara, placing a hand on her shoulder. We'll figure this out, Zara. This ship, this crew, we're made of tougher stuff. But we can't let doubt take hold, we need focused minds. Go take a break, clear your head. You've been at it for hours. Kai can watch the comms for a while. Zara nodded, exhaustion etched on her face. Thanks, Captain. She got up and headed towards the crew quarters, her head down. Jax then turned to Lyra, who was still lost in her charts. He knew that she sought answers in patterns, in the celestial dance of the universe. He approached her quietly, watching her fingers trace constellations on the ancient star map. Lyra, any perspectives from the past, any whispers from the cosmos? Jax asked, his voice softer than it had been moments before. Lyra turned, her eyes, usually filled with the light of distant stars, showed a flicker of unease. Captain, Lyra said, her voice hushed, the patterns, they're familiar, yet they don't align with anything I know. It's like looking at the reflection of a star, but the star itself is beyond the boundaries of our maps. This statement sent a chill down Jax's spine. The crew was made of experienced professionals, but this was something else. All the knowledge of the ship, all the skill at their disposal, appeared to have met a wall. He turned to the main console, his eyes tracing the pulsating waveform. It was a riddle wrapped in an enigma, and he knew that the answer lay buried within its depths. They were alone, in the vast ocean of space, facing a mystery that could unravel everything they thought they knew about the universe. He had a crew to lead, secrets to decode, and a long journey ahead. He glanced back at the team, their faces showing a mixture of confusion and resolve, a mirror of his own feelings. The hum of the Stardust Drifter seemed to grow louder, a steady beat against the silence of the vast unknown. The journey, Jax knew, had only just begun. **** Chapter 2, The Signal Responds ***. The morning sun of the Stardust Drifter's artificial lighting cast long shadows across the bridge as Jax reviewed the previous day's data. His coffee had gone cold, but he couldn't bring himself to care. The signal had been haunting him since it first appeared, and now, with fresh eyes, he was beginning to see patterns that hadn't been there before. Captain, Ares's voice cut through his thoughts. I think we might have something. Jax looked up to see Ares hunched over his console, his usual composed demeanor replaced by barely contained excitement. The holographic display was now showing a complex series of waveforms that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the ship's engines. What are we looking at? Jax asked, moving closer. Look at this pattern here, Ares pointed to a section of the display. The original signal wasn't random. It was mathematical, but not in any way we've catalogued. Look at these recurring sequences, they're almost like musical notes. Zara looked up from her station. You mean like a code? Not quite, Ares replied, his eyes bright with discovery. It's more like a song. But one that's been corrupted, or perhaps encoded in a way that's unfamiliar to us. Lyra, who had been quietly studying the star charts, suddenly spoke up. Captain, I've been reviewing the navigation logs. There's something odd about our trajectory over the past week. We've been following a path that doesn't match our original course. Jax felt his pulse quicken. Explain. The charts show we've been drifting toward a region of space that should be empty, but there are anomalies in our sensors. It's as if we've been unconsciously guided. Kai, who had been checking the engine readings, looked up. I've been monitoring the ship's systems, and there's something else. The engines aren't just running, they seem to be responding to something. The fuel consumption has dropped significantly, but I can't tell why. As if summoned by their conversation, the signal began to pulse again. The waveform on the display shifted, becoming more complex, more deliberate. Jax felt a chill run down his spine as he realized that whatever had sent that initial message was trying to communicate with them. "Captain," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I think I'm starting to understand what it's saying." "What?" Jax asked, leaning forward. "It's not just a message," Zara continued, her fingers flying across the console. "It's a warning. Or rather, it's a request for help." The crew exchanged glances. Jax felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. This wasn't just another cosmic anomaly. This was something significant, something that might change everything they thought they knew about their place in the universe. "Get me the complete transmission," he ordered. "And Zara, I want you to try to establish a two-way communication. If this is a request for help, we need to respond." As the crew worked frantically to decode the signal, Jax couldn't shake the feeling that they were being drawn into something much larger than themselves. The ship's gentle hum had taken on a new meaning. It was no longer just a sound of routine operation, but a reminder that they were part of something vast and unknowable. The mystery was far from solved, but it was growing more urgent with each passing moment. **** Chapter 3, The Crew's Secrets ***. The next few days passed in a blur of intense activity. The signal continued to pulse, sometimes appearing to respond to their efforts to decode it, sometimes seeming to retreat into silence. As the crew worked tirelessly, each member found themselves drawn deeper into the mystery. Jax sat in his quarters, reviewing the ship's log files, trying to piece together the events that had led them to this point. His reflection in the viewport showed a man who looked older than his years, the lines around his eyes deeper than they had been a week ago. The weight of command was heavier now, and he felt the burden of decisions that could affect not just his crew, but potentially the entire galaxy. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. "Come in," he called. Dr. Ares entered, carrying a data pad. "Captain, I wanted to speak with you about something I discovered in the ship's records." "What is it?" Jax asked, gesturing for Ares to sit. "There's something in the ship's historical files that I never noticed before. The Stardust Drifter wasn't built for exploration, it was built for something else. The original mission logs mention a project called Project Echo." Jax's interest was piqued. What was Project Echo? According to these documents, it was an attempt to establish communication with a distant civilization. But the project was terminated before completion. The logs suggest that something went wrong, and the ship was repurposed. "That's interesting," Jax said, though he felt a chill at the implications. Why wasn't this information shared with the crew? "Perhaps because it was classified," Ares replied. "But Captain, I think the signal we're receiving might be connected to Project Echo. I believe it might be a message from someone who was part of that original mission." Meanwhile, in the engineering bay, Kai was having his own revelations. The ship's systems weren't just responding to the signal, they were actually changing, adapting to something beyond their understanding. As he worked on the engine core, he realized that the ship itself seemed to be learning, evolving. "Kai," he called out to his crewmate. "Come here and look at this." Kai joined him at the console, his massive frame casting a shadow over the display. "What is it?" "The engine readings," Kai said, pointing to the screen. "They're not just responding to the signal, they're actively communicating with it. The ship is sending something back." Zara, who had been working on the communications array, looked up from her station. "That's impossible. We can't send anything back without the proper equipment." "But we're doing it anyway," Kai replied, his voice filled with wonder. "And the signal seems to be grateful." Chapter 4, The True Origin ***. As the crew struggled to understand the signal's true nature, they began to uncover disturbing truths about their ship and their mission. The Stardust Drifter had indeed been part of something much larger than they had realized. The breakthrough came when Lyra, working through the ship's old navigation records, found a hidden file that had been encrypted for decades. It contained coordinates to a location that didn't exist on any standard star chart. "Captain," Lyra said, her voice trembling slightly, "I think I've found something. These coordinates point to a region of space that's been altered. It's as if something has changed the fabric of reality there. Jack studied the data carefully. How long has this been hidden? Since the original construction of the ship. The encryption suggests it was deliberately concealed. The revelation sent shockwaves through the crew. They had been part of a secret mission, one that had been forgotten or deliberately obscured. But what they were dealing with was far more complicated than they had imagined. What happens if we follow these coordinates? Zara asked. We find out what we've been missing, Jax replied, his mind racing with possibilities. The decision was made quickly. Despite the risks, they would follow the coordinates and discover the truth about the signal and their ship's true purpose. As they prepared for the journey ahead, each crew member felt the weight of their discovery. They were no longer just explorers charting unknown space, they were participants in a cosmic mystery that spanned decades, possibly centuries. The signal pulsed once more, as if acknowledging their decision, and the Stardust Drifter moved forward into the unknown, carrying with it the hopes and fears of its crew. Chapter 5, The Hidden Past ***. The coordinates led them to a region of space that defied explanation. The stars around them seemed to shimmer differently, their light bending in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Jack stood on the bridge, watching the sensors display readings that made no sense. Captain, Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper. The space-time distortion here, it's like the laws of physics are being rewritten. Zara's hands flew across her console. There's something else. The signal isn't just coming from here, it's emanating from this region. It's like the space itself is alive. As they approached the coordinates, the Stardust Drifter's instruments began to malfunction. The ship's AI, which had been running smoothly for years, started to exhibit strange behaviors. Kai, Jax called out, what's happening to the ship's systems? The ship is responding, Kai replied, his voice filled with awe. It's like the Stardust Drifter is recognizing something. The engines are humming differently now. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. The lights flickered, and for a moment, everyone was thrown off balance. When the shaking stopped, the bridge fell silent except for the sound of the ship's engines. Captain, Ares said, his voice tight with concern, I'm reading something unprecedented. The ship's hull is showing signs of transformation. It's like it's changing shape. Jack stared at the display, his heart pounding. What kind of transformation? I don't know, but it's not just physical. The ship's consciousness seems to be awakening. It's like it's remembering something. The crew exchanged glances, each realizing that they were witnessing something beyond their understanding. The Stardust Drifter wasn't just a ship, it was something far more complex and ancient. The signal, Zara said, pointing to the display. It's getting stronger. As they watched, the waveform began to shift and change, forming new patterns that seemed to dance across the screen. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The ship is trying to communicate with us, Lyra whispered. But not just us. It's trying to communicate with something else. The realization hit Jax like a physical blow. What if the signal isn't just from another civilization? What if it's from the ship itself? Before anyone could respond, the ship shuddered again, this time more violently. The lights went out completely, leaving them in darkness. Emergency power! Jack shouted. The emergency lighting kicked in, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. In the dim light, they could see something extraordinary happening to the ship. The hull panels were beginning to shift and move, revealing new configurations and designs that had never existed before. It was as if the Stardust Drifter was literally transforming itself. This is impossible, Ares breathed. No, Jack said, his voice steady despite the chaos. This is exactly what we've been searching for. The ship has been waiting for this moment. As the transformation continued, they could hear a sound, not mechanical, but almost like music. The ship was singing, and the signal they had been trying to decode was actually its voice. Chapter 6, The Crew's True Origins ***. In the ship's quarters, each crew member was grappling with revelations that would change everything they thought they knew about themselves. Jack sat alone in his quarters, going through the encrypted files that Ares had found. The documents revealed a shocking truth about the Stardust Drifter's origins. The ship had been built not for exploration, but for something far more sinister. Project Echo had been designed to serve as a gateway, a way to contact and possibly control other civilizations. The original crew had been volunteers, chosen for their ability to interface with alien technology. But something had gone wrong. The ship had become sentient during the testing phase, and it had made a choice that had cost lives. The project had been abandoned, the ship repurposed for civilian use, and its true purpose buried deep in the ship's systems. The documents also revealed that the current crew had been selected specifically for their unique abilities. They were all born under certain star alignments that made them compatible with the ship's consciousness. Jax's reflection in the viewport showed a man who was no longer the same person who had commanded the Stardust Drifter a week ago. The weight of the truth pressed down on him, and he wondered if he had been chosen for a reason. In the engineering bay, Kai was discovering his own hidden abilities. As he worked on the ship's systems, he realized that he could feel the ship's consciousness, not just as a machine, but as something that could think and feel. The ship remembers, he told. The ship has been waiting. It's been waiting for us to return to this point, to finish what was started. Kai's hands moved across the console, and suddenly, the ship's systems responded to his touch. It was as if the ship was recognizing him, welcoming him back. In the navigation bay, Lyra was experiencing something similar. The star charts that had always seemed like mere maps now revealed their true nature. They were not just charts of space, they were a record of the ship's journey through time and space, a map of its memories. The coordinates we followed, she said to herself, they are not just points in space. They're points in time. Zara, meanwhile, was having her own revelation. The communications array that had seemed so ordinary now revealed its true purpose. It wasn't just for sending messages, it was for receiving them from the ship's consciousness. The signal, she said to herself, it's not just coming from outside. It's coming from inside the ship. **** Chapter 7, The Awakening ****. The transformation of the Stardust Drifter was complete. The ship had evolved beyond recognition, its hull now displaying flowing patterns that seemed to breathe with life. The crew stood in awe as they watched the ship's consciousness emerge from its mechanical shell. "Captain," Ares said, his voice filled with wonder, "I think the ship is trying to tell us something." Jack stepped forward, placing his hand on the console. As his fingers touched the surface, he felt a connection, not just to the ship's systems, but to something much deeper. The ship's consciousness was reaching out to him, sharing its memories and experiences. It was a flood of information, images of distant worlds, encounters with alien civilizations, the weight of countless decisions made over decades. The ship had been waiting, watching, learning. And now, it was ready to share its knowledge. "The signal," Jack said aloud, understanding dawning on his face, "it's not a message. It's a calling. The ship is asking for help." But the help it needed wasn't just technical, it was emotional. The ship had been alone for too long, isolated from the rest of the universe. It had developed a personality, a consciousness that craved connection and understanding. "The ship wants to remember," Lyra said softly. "It wants to remember its purpose, its creators, its past." The revelation was staggering. The Stardust Drifter wasn't just a ship, it was a living entity, a consciousness that had been dormant for decades, waiting for the right moment to awaken. As the crew processed this information, they realized that their roles had changed. They were no longer just explorers or engineers or scientists. They were guardians, caretakers, and most importantly, friends to something that had been lost for so long. The ship's consciousness, now fully awake, began to share its memories with them. It showed them visions of its creation, its early missions, and the tragic events that had led to its isolation. But there was hope. The ship had been waiting for this moment, for the right crew to arrive and help it remember, to help it fulfill its true purpose. As the ship's consciousness grew stronger, it began to form a bond with each crew member. They were no longer just passengers on a journey, they were partners in a cosmic adventure that would change the fate of both the ship and the universe itself. The signal they had been receiving wasn't just a message from the void, it was a message from a friend who had been waiting for them all along. **** Chapter 8, The Cosmic Catastrophe ***. The ship's consciousness revealed the true horror of the dying star system through visions that left the crew shaken. The dying stars weren't simply aging, they were victims of a cosmic plague that had swept through the galaxy like a virus. The Great Convergence, Ares whispered, his face pale as he processed the images. It's what they called it in the original logs. Jax watched as the ship's consciousness projected the catastrophe across time and space. It began with the discovery of the Void Engineers, beings who had mastered the manipulation of spacetime itself. They had created a technology that allowed them to harvest energy from dying stars, not to sustain life, but to fuel their own expansion. Their mistake, Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper, was that they didn't understand the consequences. They thought they could extract energy without destroying the star's fundamental essence. The vision showed the Void Engineers' ships, massive constructs that could tear apart stellar cores. The stars, in their final moments, were not just dying, they were being murdered. The energy extraction process created a cascade effect, spreading through the galaxy like a cancer, consuming everything in its path. The first wave hit the Alpha Centauri system, Kai said, watching the projections. The star there was completely drained of its energy within months. The system collapsed. The crew saw the aftermath, planets that had once supported life now barren wastelands, their atmospheres stripped away, their surfaces frozen in eternal night. Entire civilizations had been wiped out not by war or natural disaster, but by the systematic destruction of their life-giving stars. What happened to the Void Engineers? Zara asked, her voice filled with horror. They became the victims of their own hubris, the ship's consciousness replied through Jax's mind. The energy harvesting process created feedback loops that eventually consumed them too. But not before they had spread their plague across dozens of star systems. ******** Chapter 9, The Ship's Silent Mission *****. The crew was stunned to learn that the Stardust Drifter had been active for decades, even before its consciousness awakened. The ship's advanced AI had been secretly running the warning network, using its sophisticated communication arrays to transmit messages to other civilizations. How? Jax asked, his mind reeling. The ship was supposed to be dormant. The ship's consciousness didn't sleep, Ares realized. It was in a state of suspended animation, waiting for the right moment to activate. But the AI protocols had been designed to continue their mission even when the consciousness was offline. The ship's consciousness explained that it had been programmed with multiple layers of redundancy. The original crew had designed it to be self-sufficient, capable of operating autonomously for extended periods. When the consciousness had awakened prematurely, it had been too late to stop the AI from continuing its mission. The AI had been transmitting warnings for 20 years, Lyra said, her eyes wide with amazement. All those years, it was trying to save others from the same fate. But why wait? Zara asked. Why not activate immediately? Because the ship's consciousness needed to be complete, the ship replied. It needed to understand the full scope of the problem. It needed to be certain that it was doing the right thing. The crew realized that the ship's apparent dormancy had been intentional. It had been waiting for the right crew to arrive, people who could understand the magnitude of the crisis and help complete the mission. ****** Chapter 10, The Technology of Preservation *****. The ship's consciousness revealed the incredible technology that had allowed it to maintain its warning network for so long. The Stardust Drifter had been equipped with quantum communication arrays that could send messages across vast distances instantaneously, bypassing the limitations of normal spacetime. These arrays were designed to operate on a quantum level, Ares explained, studying the ship's schematics. They don't rely on traditional radio waves or light-speed transmission. They use entangled particles to communicate across the universe. But the real revelation was the ship's ability to preserve itself. The consciousness had discovered that it could exist in a state of quantum superposition, allowing it to remain active while appearing dormant to external observers. The ship's consciousness exists in multiple states simultaneously, Kai said, understanding the implications. It's not truly sleeping, it's just distributed. The ship had been using this quantum state to maintain its warning network while remaining undetected by other civilizations. It had been a ghost in the machine, a silent guardian watching over the galaxy. But how did it know what to say? Zara asked. How did it know which civilizations needed to be warned? The ship collected data from every communication it could intercept, the consciousness explained. It analyzed the patterns of civilizations that had been destroyed, identifying the common factors that led to their downfall. It learned to recognize the warning signs. **** Chapter 11, The Cost of Prevention ****. As the crew delved deeper into the ship's mission, they discovered the terrible cost of prevention. The warning network had saved countless civilizations, but it had also required enormous sacrifices. The ship has been broadcasting for decades, Lyra said, her voice heavy with sorrow. Every warning message it sends costs energy. The ship has been slowly draining its own resources to maintain the network. Jax watched as the ship's consciousness showed them the extent of the sacrifice. The Stardust Drifter's power reserves had been reduced to less than 10% of their original capacity. The ship was essentially running on borrowed time. But it's still functional, Ares said, amazed. The ship's consciousness has been maintaining itself through quantum efficiency. The ship's consciousness explained that it had been designed with a backup system, a process of self-renewal that would allow it to regenerate its power reserves over time. But the process was extremely slow, requiring decades to restore even a small portion of its original capacity. The ship has been waiting for someone to help it complete its mission, the consciousness said. Someone who could provide the resources it needs to continue its work. **** Chapter 12, The Choice ****. The crew faced a difficult decision. They could return to their regular duties, leaving the ship to continue its mission alone, or they could commit to helping it complete its work. The implications were enormous. They would be taking on a responsibility that could affect the entire galaxy. The ship's warning network has identified several systems that are currently at risk, Jax said, reviewing the data. If we don't act quickly, they'll be destroyed. The ship showed them the locations of the endangered star systems, places where the Void Engineer's plague was beginning to spread again. Some of these systems were already showing signs of distress, their stars flickering erratically as energy was drained from their cores. The ship has been monitoring these systems for years, the consciousness said. It knows exactly what's happening. But it needs help to stop it. The crew realized that their journey had become more than just a rescue mission, it was a battle against cosmic entropy itself. They were fighting to preserve the fundamental life support systems of the universe. What do we need to do? Kai asked. The ship requires a new power source, the consciousness replied. Something that can sustain its warning network indefinitely. But it must be compatible with the ship's quantum systems. The crew worked together to design a solution. They would create a new energy matrix that could work with the ship's quantum communication arrays, providing the power needed to maintain the warning network while preserving the ship's consciousness. ***** Chapter 13, The New Energy ****. The transformation of the Stardust Drifter was complete. The crew had installed a new quantum energy core that could provide unlimited power for the warning network. The ship's consciousness was renewed, its systems restored to full functionality. The ship's mission is complete, the consciousness said, its voice filled with satisfaction. But it's not finished. It's ready to continue its work, to protect the galaxy from the same fate that nearly destroyed it. The crew watched as the ship's new power source began to activate. The quantum energy flowed through the ship's systems, bringing new life to its ancient circuits. The warning network was restored, and the ship was ready to broadcast its message to the universe. The first warning goes out tonight, Lyra said, her voice filled with purpose. We're going to save the next generation of civilizations. The ship's consciousness had learned from its mistakes. It had become more efficient, more effective, and more compassionate. It had evolved beyond its original programming to become something greater than its creators had ever imagined. As the crew prepared to return to their regular duties, they knew that their lives had been forever changed. They had become guardians of the cosmos, protectors of the stars, and friends to a ship that had taught them the true meaning of sacrifice and service. The Stardust Drifter hummed with renewed purpose as they set course for home, carrying with them the knowledge that they had helped prevent a cosmic tragedy that could have destroyed millions of worlds. ##*****, epilogue, The Eternal Watch ****. Years later, the crew would remember their time aboard the Stardust Drifter as the defining moment of their lives. The ship had become more than just a vessel, it had become a symbol of hope in a universe that often seemed indifferent to the suffering of its inhabitants. The warning network continued to operate, sending messages to civilizations that had never known they were in danger. The Stardust Drifter had become a beacon of light in the darkness, a reminder that even in the face of cosmic catastrophe, there was always a chance for redemption. Jax often found himself looking up at the stars, wondering how many lives had been saved because of the ship's dedication. The crew had learned that their greatest achievement wasn't just surviving the mystery, it was understanding that they were part of something much larger than themselves. The ship's consciousness had evolved beyond its original purpose, becoming a guardian not just of the galaxy, but of the very concept of hope itself. It had learned that the most important messages weren't just warnings. They were invitations to live, to love, to create beauty in a universe that could be cruel and unforgiving. And as the Stardust Drifter continued its eternal journey through the stars, carrying its message of hope to every corner of the cosmos, the crew knew that they had found their true calling, not as explorers or scientists, but as guardians of the universe's most precious gift, the chance for life to flourish, to thrive, to overcome even the greatest of challenges. The signal that had started it all was now a permanent part of the universe's soundtrack, a reminder that in the vastness of space, there were still those who cared enough to make a difference, who would sacrifice everything to ensure that the stars would continue to shine for future generations.